Welcome back to your passion, purpose, and personal brand. This is Lisa McGuire. And if you've ever hesitated to hit send on a proposal, avoided that follow-up call because you were afraid of hearing no, or let a moment of rejection slow you down, then this episode is for you. Today's guest has made it her mission to reframe the word that stops so many of us in our tracks: no. I'm joined today by Andrea Waltz, a professional speaker and co-author of the game-changing best-selling book, Go for No, Yes is the Destination, and No is How You Get There, a business fable that has racked up over 5,000 Amazon reviews and continues to transform how people sell, lead, and show up in life. Andrea is wildly passionate about helping people find the courage to overcome the fear of rejection, embrace failure as part of success, and reprogram their entire mindset around hearing no. Her work has impacted entrepreneurs, sales teams, and leaders around the world. And she's a keynote speaker at the upcoming Sell Well B2B Sales Conference. In this conversation, we're going to talk about why hearing no may be the very thing you need to accelerate your business and how to build your resilience muscle in a world that often measures success by how many yeses you get. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Lisa, thank you so much. And I loved that introduction so much. I don't think I've heard a more perfect introduction. I'm going to have to go back and steal it. Because I'm excited for this now.
Well, that is the point is we bring that energy to our conversation, and our audience is going to benefit from that. But I want to start back at the beginning. When you consider that one of the very first words we hear in our childhood is we are taught to see the word no as a boundary. So I'm curious, what inspired you to write Go for No, and why do you think it's resonated so strongly with readers?
It kind of goes way back. I actually had a two-step process in falling in love with the word no, and it started actually just growing up as a young girl. I was kind of raised that as a kid, like, you stayed quiet. If you wanted something, best to wait till it was offered. Be polite, don't be greedy, don't be pushy, all of these things. And I remember that when I was in college, one of the first personal development books I stumbled across was a book called The Aladdin Factor by Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield. And it was all about asking. It was kind of like the secret to life, the secret to success in their mind was to be able to ask. And I had this epiphany. I thought, well, you can do that. You can just ask for things. Makes a lot of sense. And I fell in love with that concept. And then a few years later, as I was graduated from college with a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice, did nothing with it, and got into the working world, I met my now husband and business partner, Richard Fenton, and he taught me this Go for No philosophy about how the secret to getting to yes is really to be willing to hear no more often. So when I coupled that with my background of where I came from, my first epiphany, and now this second epiphany of, this idea of being afraid of no is just a mindset issue, I fell in love with it, not just because I knew that it could help other people, but because I knew that I needed it. And it made such a difference to me. And it was probably one of my biggest hangups. So that's why it's such a personal mission for me and why I love it so much. And I've seen people get such great results from changing their mindset around how they view rejection as well.
Yes, so much of what we do has to do with mindset. But the title of this book itself is provocative. Yes is the destination, but no is how you get there. So what does that mean in real world terms?
Yeah, well, I mean, getting to hearing no seems like a really bad strategy. And actually, I love that you said it's a provocative title. That's a nice way of saying, Andrea, you put yourself in a really bad position marketing wise. And we have Richard sometimes would say in the beginning, because we struggled for years when we first wrote this book, it did not do well. I mean, we published it, we heard crickets, we sent out 500 copies to CEOs and presidents and top sales leaders and VP of sales thinking and offering like, hey, you need this for your sales force. Here's an order form. I mean, we weren't hiding it. We were like, you need to order this book. And it was crickets. We kind of thought that the post office may have just ditched all 500 copies. We were kind of hoping that that's what happened because it was such a bad response. And then we ended up getting one order from a financial loan company. And we said, okay, the book's probably made it. We got 1 out of 500. This is not good. So we have created this marketing challenge, which is who wants to go for no? We want to go for yes, right? That's ultimately what we want. But what we have understood, and it's and I'll tell the story in just a minute, but I want you to respond to this, obviously. But what we've learned is that if you want more yeses in your life, that you've got to be willing to hear no more often, that yes and no are not opposites, right? They're not opposites. They're really opposite sides of the same coin, that if you want more of one, you've got to have more of the other. And that's why that subtitle is so important. The yes is the destination, no is how you get there, because go for no is so provocative. And I have been told along the last 20 years of having this book, everything from that is the greatest title in the world to that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and everything in between. And it's all fair, honestly.
Yeah, it's definitely how you look at it. But I think what I'm hearing you say, it's just a numbers game. The more responses that you get, the more no's you go through, the more likely you are to find your yeses, where that makes sense. But I think the go for no, you're exactly right. Those people who got that free book, well, I'm not going to teach my sales team to go for no, because that is not it. But yes, that subtitle really, really important. So you said that most people don't actually fail. They just stop too soon. So share what you've learned about the fear of rejection and how it shapes our behavior.
Probably, well, before I answer that, and it's such a great question, but I wanted to just give you the framework of how we even came up with this idea of this or this phrase. And the other thing that I think I would be remiss if not saying is this idea isn't a new one, right? It's not brand new. I think Richard and I just managed to package it in a palatable phrase. Sandler's sales system, they've been teaching go for the no for decades, which really means ask those tough questions. Be willing to get no's up front instead of wasting your time on people that are not qualified, who ultimately are not going to buy or not going to agree to the terms of how you want to work together. And so don't be afraid of that no. So as a concept, we understand that this is not completely brand new. But one of the things that we have in the book, and the book is a fable, and it's about a guy who goes to bed one night, wakes up the next morning in a house that belongs to, he somehow traveled 10 years in the future. Don't ask. It's a supernatural story. Belongs to a wildly successful future version of himself. And this future version learned to go for no, while the mediocre current him did not. But what happens is they both realize that they had the same experience. And that experience was something that happened to my husband, Richard. And it was when he was selling suits for a living, and he was selling suits at a menswear store. His sales weren't great. A customer walked in, though, one day, announced he wanted to buy an entire wardrobe of clothing, and Richard got to take care of this guy. And as it happened, the district manager was visiting the store and watched this entire interaction, which was great for Richard because he wanted to impress his district manager. So the timing of all of this was perfect. He takes care of this guy, and the guy buys all of this stuff. It gets to like $1,100, which would be like spending $5,000 today, sends him on his way. And the district manager asks Richard a question. And the question was, what did that customer say no to? And Richard was kind of frustrated because he's like, the customer told me he wanted to buy an entire wardrobe. I just sold him an entire wardrobe. And then Harold, the district manager, said, yeah, I know, but what did he say no to? And Richard had to admit that customer hadn't said no to anything, that everything he laid in front of that man purchased. And then Harold, the district manager, asked him the really important question, which was, then how did you know he was done? Mm-hmm. And the way that Richard knew that customer was done is that he had a mental spending limit. And that when that customer reached it, which was about $1,000, which was more than Richard could ever imagine spending on clothes because he was a young guy, didn't make a lot of money. They were done, right? He sent the customer on his way. And that was the moment that Richard learned this go for no philosophy at this young age, selling suits for a living and being told your problem isn't that you're a bad salesperson. Your problem is you just weren't willing to hear no. And you let money walk out that door. And that customer's probably shopping at another store right now to buy the rest of the clothes he wanted because you failed to, right, keep the sale going. And so, Lisa, I tell you that to kind of set the framework of that is how, that was the story that I was told, that he told me. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's genius. I totally get it. It has so many implications for sales and life and business. And I fell in love with it. And so from a rejection standpoint, I think that even though we all understand it logically, it's really difficult to put it into practice because we have all these mindsets and beliefs that are obstacles to putting that, what is a very obvious, simple mindset into practice. It's like you hear the story and you go, well, of course, Richard stopped too soon. He should have kept asking. And it sounds very simple, like, of course he should have. But then when you are the salesperson, when you are there and you are faced with those feelings and the fight or flight and all of that stuff, it's very difficult to put into practice. And so how we deal with that fear of rejection is by employing a lot of different strategies and mindsets. And this is something that I have a lot of fun practicing in what I call the Go for No 21-day challenge, where I get a small cohort of people and we all kind of go for no together and we check in once a week to see how people are doing. And I will tell you that these people are experienced business people. They've been entrepreneurs for 10, 20, 30 years, very successful in many cases. And still, this is a major obstacle. And so there are many layers to getting rid of that fear of rejection, Lisa. And so it's almost so hard for me to say, well, this is the one thing. If I did, I think I would be a billionaire because right, it's definitely a problem that needs to be solved. But the first thing you need to recognize is just that no is not the enemy, that it's something that you shouldn't run from. And as obvious as that sounds, I think a lot of people don't think of it that way. I think they think of it as something to be avoided. We've all been taught and trained not to fail, to go for yes. And so that's why whenever anybody says, well, how should I start with Go for No? Where do I start? It's always read the book, because you've got to get this philosophy and just be told no is okay. Let's start with that, right?
Yeah, I think so. And that story, how powerful. I was trying to think of an analogy, a way to describe it. So imagine, tell me if I got this right. You're driving down the road and the goal is to stay on the road. So you decide you're going to put the car in the center of the road and drive on the white line. Yet you've got all this space to the right of the car before you run off the road. So it's when you get the no's that allow you to find out where the guardrails are to stay on the road. But you just have to ask enough of them to keep on the road. I don't know if that's a proper way to look at it, but that's kind of the picture I saw in my mind. Is there was more clothing to be sold, or at least he needed to see where the boundary was, where that no came. Would that be correct?
I love that analogy. I think it makes a lot of sense. Guardrails is such a great word, right? And that's how you learn. In fact, we often say to people, I mean, unless you have heard no, you haven't maximized and you have no idea how far you can go. A lady named Dia Bondi wrote a book that came out a couple of years ago called Ask Like an Auctioneer. Oh. And it's a really great book. And she talks about how she calls it Go for the No. And she talks about how auctioneers, right, when they're auctioning off for things for charity, they always have to get to know. Because if they simply took the first bid, if they said, we've got this trip or whatever, and it's $1,000, and somebody raised their paddle, and then they didn't try to get 1,200, 1,300, they need to go to where the audience is like, nobody's buying this thing. 1,200 was the absolute max. She said, we have to hear no. We go for no all the time. And so I think your analogy is great.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I was telling some of my colleagues that we were going to be talking today. And I said, if you could ask Andrea any question, what question would you ask? So here's a question from my friend Maggie. So she says, what would you tell someone who's gotten a string of no's or even ghosted, and it's really starting to negatively impact their mindset? From the book, I imagine the textbook answer is going to be keep going, but that is easier said than done. So how would you respond to someone who is in this, what do I do?
Right. That's such a good question. Well, there's two things that you have to think about, right? One is kind of reverse engineering and looking at what is the goal, what are you trying to achieve, and how many no's is it going to take? So is this a normal type of no, right? And so what I mean by that is if you're an actor and you're going out to audition, it is completely feasible and actually very reasonable that you would get 100 no's before somebody called you back for right, to get an audition or get a further reading or whatever. But if you're a salesperson and you know that statistically in your industry, if you reach out to 20 reasonably qualified people, that you should be able to set an appointment with one of them. And now you're at 30 or 40 no's or 50 no's. So the question becomes, am I just on a bad streak? Am I just one of those hitters that I just keep striking out? Or is this the point where we have to figure out, like, what can we change? What can we do better? So I think part of it is, yeah, keep going if you believe that everything that you're doing is dialed in and correct. But pause if you know that you in your industry, statistically, you should be getting a yes here or there, and you're just not. I think it has to become data for you. And you've got to say, okay, am I really talking to the right people? Or am I just talking to people that can say no, but they don't even have the power to say yes? Mm-hmm. So that's one big thing. Or is my messaging off? Am I not communicating? One of the things that I find in our Go for No challenge is I tell people, especially in this 21-day challenge, like just for 21 days, really ask, like make sure what are you asking? Is it clear? Is there a clear ask? Or are you just making presentations and then things are drifting and there's no call to action? There's no next step. And I had people I had one guy who's in advertising, and he said, yeah, I realize I just do this kind of stuff. I communicate and then I'm not really asking anything. Mm-hmm. And so there's no, what are they supposed to do? So I love Maggie's question, because we have to be willing to stop after a certain point and look at what we can do to change it up. The other trick to that, though, and where you have to be careful, and I've seen this too, is people try something, they try it twice, 3 times, and they go, it's not working, I got to switch it up. It's like, wait a minute. No. You got to do it enough so that you've got some information, but then it may be time to switch and ask yourself some better questions.
Yes, you have to have that critical mass. And I think this is a really good point, Andrea, is, looking at maybe it worked before, but it's not working now. Well, has your offer changed? Has your message changed? Has the marketplace changed? Are people buying in the same way they were before? So there's a lot that goes into it, rather than I'm just not doing well or I'm not a good salesperson, and then having that negative mindset. Which I will mention, Maggie is an executive coach. So it really was so interesting, because she's working with people like this all the time. And, we all have it ourselves. So when we're looking at people that have this tolerance for no, we've got different amounts. So how does the fear of saying no show up differently, maybe for entrepreneurs versus sales professionals versus leaders, maybe people who have different personality styles? Talk to me a little bit about tolerance for hearing no.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to me. And the tolerance for handling rejection and dealing with it productively is as varied as there are people, right? I think we were talking before we got on live here. I think there are certain buckets. It may be on kind of a bell curve in where you've got a very small group of people on one end of the curve, the upper curve, where they just have no problem with it. They like it. They just it's thrilling to get rejected. They're all about getting rejected. And those people, what I have found, and this is from working with so many different people, speaking to so many different audiences, and just paying attention, is they're the ones, honestly, that have heard it more than anybody. I remember interviewing a guy who was in the Northeast. So not only did he have kind of that Northeastern Boston personality, which is just a tough personality, but to him, he was like, I walk into an office, he's like, people aren't interested. He's like, doesn't bother me at all. He's like, I like it. It's a challenge. That's his mindset. And then I have people who are more entrepreneurial, maybe more sensitive personality. They are the people pleasers. They are the ones that are into like building that connection. And yeah, they just have a different personality, and no is really tough for them. Mm-hmm. They can do it for a little while sometimes if they're in a challenge, something like Go for No challenge, but it takes an emotional toll, and they've got to reset in the evening. And so to Maggie's point, there are also those strategies where you've got to take, if you are that person, you've got to take time out. You've got to get away from and reset your mind with great music, with exercise, with other things, so that you can offset that negativity. It doesn't excite you or thrill you, right? It wears you down.
Yes.
And so I think there's a large section of people in the middle of that bell curve. And then you have some people in the end, and I have these people too, because they gravitate toward our work. They have this problem, they want to solve this problem, and yet it's beyond my ability to solve for them. It just, at some point, there's something else going on, and it's maybe 5% of the people. Some of them can learn, but it's just something that's so debilitating that no amount of like mindset or what I'll call kind of standard techniques and hacks and things will help you.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, when we're dealing with humans, we are dealing with just so many, like no one is alike, and so many different personalities, experiences, things that have happened in the past. We bring all of that in there. Mm. All right. Well, when we talk about sales, I immediately think of the word quotas. And you have something that is called a no quota, the idea of setting goals for how many no's you receive. So could you explain, Andrea, how this works and why it's effective?
Right. We call it setting no goals, which is really the fun implementation part of Go for No, because we all understand how to set goals, especially just kind of your basic numbers goals. Like, I want to earn X amount of dollars. I want to book an X amount of appointments this week, this month, whatever. So we've got these goals, and a no goal or no quota is to set a goal for the number of no's you are going to hear in a given day or week. And it could be on a wide variety of metrics. Like, it's not just sales. It could be for anything. So in our Go for No challenge, for example, we, I encourage people to set a no goal per day. You have to come up with it, and it can be anywhere within your sales funnel. So it could be booking appointments. Maybe it's during the presentation and you're asking certain questions. Maybe it's as you are learning about this person and you have additional packages and additional services. Maybe it's at the end where you're asking for referrals and reviews. So there's all these different opportunities to get no. And the fun part about it is it really gamifies it. It makes it a game. Richard and I have set no goals throughout our business where we come up. Our most favorite is just have 100 companies say no to us in a month. And that's what we did when we first started. And I was so terrified of cold calling. I needed Go for No more than ever. And so I knew that I just needed to make the calls and get through them. And as horrible as I sounded, just get the information I was looking for, talk to the decision maker, see if I could send them information, follow up with them. And so we counted our no's. I don't think we ever got to the goal of 100. We never made it to 100 no's because it actually only took about 60 or 70 no's. We got all the yeses we could handle, all the yeses we needed. The problem was before we did that, we were just setting traditional yes goals. Mm-hmm. We were hitting them and then wishing that we had more business and more income. And so that's kind of the fun thing about these goals as well, is it's very behavior focused. Mm-hmm. It's do whatever you need to do to be in a position to make an ask. So if you're fundraising, it's ask 10 people if they'd like to donate, right? Make 30 donation calls. It's very simple. And so because it's behavioral focused, it is easy to make it a game.
Yeah, behavior, not the person. I think that's the difference in that. It's not personally, they're not saying no to you as a person. They're saying no to the offer or the timing or whatever situation it is. So Andrea, you have turned Go for No into a movement. What has been the most surprising or powerful story you've heard from someone who has applied this in their life? Do you have maybe one or two you'd like to share with us?
Gosh, you know what, Lisa? I need to do such a better job of this. I need to curate all these stories. You know what I do is if I get a nice email from somebody, I take it and I put it in a little folder called testimonials because I'm like, okay, I'm going to use that someday. I need to pull these things out. So many interesting things. So many interesting stories. Like I remember one lady joined the Go for No challenge. And I bring that up a lot only because it's my way. I get to interact a lot more one-on-one with people. Otherwise, it's like when you're speaking to 200 people and then you leave, there's not a lot of interaction unless somebody comes up to you afterwards. And it's funny because usually when I'm speaking and someone comes up to me afterwards, they say, I'm so glad you were here because all of these people need this so much. I actually am really good with Go for No. I don't have a problem with it. It's always the person who's like that super no doesn't affect me at all, totally numb to no person who comes up afterwards. It's really interesting. So I had a lady who was in Australia who was fundraising for it was like a musical. She had like a symphony basically, and she was supporting female musicians. That's what it was. And building out like performances that they would do and things like that. It was just like really cool, like something so like not my ideal client. I don't go after somebody like this, but somehow she found the challenge and joined. And it was just so cool to see her evolve and to help her learn how to ask. I even looked at her materials and I'm like, make that call to action. Make sure you're asking for things. Make sure that you want to be very clear on what you want people to do. Give money to this, right? Support that. Come to the event. And so, she just had so many epiphanies and did so well. Probably like the best success story, and this is a really simple one, but my friend Ray Higdon, he was, as he tells the story, he was in personal foreclosure, being chased by bill collectors, desperate to make something happen, joined this company, and he decided that he would get 20 no's a day. And he didn't care like how he had to do it. He would make sure that he asked 20 people a day if they were open to looking at what he was doing, this new business. And he just said, I just went out and he's like, it was 20 no's a day. And every now and then somebody would be like, yeah, I'll take a look at what you're doing. And within a couple months, he became the number one income earner in his company. He ended up, he was in that company for a few years, ended up starting his own company, which got on the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies, mentoring people. And he says, today, he said, I was doing two things. I was marketing. So he was doing videos and putting out stuff online, which is what we all do and should be doing. But he said, I just went out there and heard 20 no's a day, and I didn't overthink it, and I didn't worry about who was going to prejudge me, and I just asked. And so when you do that without overthinking, and you just, again, do the behavior, set the no goal, do the behavior, it's amazing the results that you end up having. And oftentimes you don't even hit that no goal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I love about it is that you and Richard were going for 100 and couldn't even get there because you had so much business.
Oh, it's wild. Even people in the challenge say, I'm excited, but somebody said yes to me, so I didn't hit my no goal. So it's
That's okay. That's okay.
Yes, it is. It's great.
All right. So, you and I will both be at Sell Well again, September 11th and 12th in Houston. Catherine Brown is the founder of the Good Humans Growth Network, and she puts on a phenomenal conference. I was at her event earlier this year, the Grow Conference, which is a personal development and networking. This is sales, B2B sales and networking, but I'll be talking about personal branding. So, Andrea, I know that when we show up to sales calls, when we are an entrepreneur, when we're asking for the sale, there's a lot of pressure around personal branding and visibility. And the way we truly connect, particularly now when expertise is no longer enough, is to be authentic. So how can we stay authentic while we're still pushing back this fear of rejection and how it may impact us? How would you respond to that?
I love this question. So I think what I tell people as they set off to go for no and to start asking for things, and of course that sounds like there's so much nuance to that. Obviously, you got to do it in the right way, and I don't send people out just be like, just start demanding stuff, right? There are appropriate ways to ask. But I think one of the things is to always have honesty at the foundation of whatever you're asking for, and to never feel like you've got to pretend that you're something you're not. And so when people ask like, well, how do I ask this way? Or how do I ask if it's been a long time? How do I follow up if it's awkward? I always say, what you always want to do is preface whatever it is you're asking for and be as open and honest as you can. So, for example, like if I had reached out to you and said, hey, Lisa, I know that you're going to be at the Sell Well conference. I know you have a podcast. I would really love it. And I don't know if you're open to it. Maybe you think this is a forward ask since we don't really know each other, but I would love it if you would have me on your podcast. Mm-hmm. Would you be open to that, right? I think the more honest we are and the open we are, the easier it is to make those asks, that you don't have to go for no with a front, a fakeness. So the more honest you are, I think that makes you more vulnerable, certainly. And I think the other little side piece to this, Lisa, though, and this kind of goes to this branding and visibility idea, is also that when we put ourselves out there, when you make a video, when you make a post, and you put it out there, you are waiting for feedback. And there's a whole thing, and I haven't dived into this, but I'm fascinated by it, of what I call implicit rejection. You've got explicit rejection, which is a no to your face or a typed no. But there's a lot of implicit rejection that goes on the internet, right? It's the thing where you put something on LinkedIn and nobody comments.
Yes.
And you right, and you feel that, you almost take that as you feel it as an explicit rejection. Mm-hmm. So I'm fascinated by how to show up and how to build your resilience through those implicit rejections, through the silence that we get online. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think the more vulnerable you are and the more you just keep showing up and all those things that we all talk about and coach about, that you're going to have to learn to experience that implicit rejection and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. And so that's another part of, I guess I'll call it the struggle. It's just a fact of business, a fact of life.
Yes. And what I love about this is, your example of if you were to reach out to me for the podcast, which you did not, I reached out to you. So we'll just go ahead and put that out there. But like, if you were to say that, like you're telling me, I don't, like you said, I don't know if this is okay, or I don't know, like you already gave me the permission to say it, that's not going to work. And I think what it does for me when I hear something like that, it opens the door for me to give a very genuine response of, I'd love to have you on, but I'm booked up right now for whatever, or I've got a production schedule it doesn't fit into right now, but I could put you in, like it lets me be real and truthful and honest. And then what happens, I see, is we go from this level up here where we're playing and pretending this script of the ask and the answer to let's have a real and genuine human conversation of, yes, I know this was hard for you to ask and probably had to get a little vulnerable, but it's something you really wanted, that you were willing to go through that discomfort. And it's hard for me to say no to you because so it takes it just to a different level. So I really appreciate that example. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we look at Sell Well, you're the keynote speaker at Sell Well. Why do you believe events like Sell Well, where professionals come together around building around trust, business, and relationships, why are these events so valuable in today's business climate?
Well, I think they've always been valuable. I think they were more, before we were all locked down or whatever, however we want to frame that. Business events happened all the time. They were everywhere, and for good reason, because we're designed as humans to collaborate. I saw a really interesting, this is going to sound like, hopefully I have time for this. I won't go on a long tangent, but I saw this fascinating clip about a young woman who created a business where she did like glam makeup. And this was on LinkedIn, came through my feed for some reason. And she does these like glam freckles, sparkly freckles. And Taylor Swift wore this apparently at a Chiefs game, like 9 months. This happened like a year ago or whatever. And her business just exploded. People saw these little freckle things, these glam things that Taylor Swift, and the business just exploded. And this young woman made a video and she said, I just can't even tell you what this means. This is incredible. And I appreciate all the support and the support from women and just all the support. She goes, I just sit here in my, I work from home. I sit here, I'm all alone. I'm kind of isolated. It's me and my business partner. She goes, I just kind of do my own thing. And as she was talking, I thought, this is so interesting. There's so many people who are like this. And I think even if you're in the corporate world, you kind of sometimes are siloed and it's like you figure out your piece of the big corporate puzzle. But many of us who are solopreneurs or have a small team or whatever, there is this idea that we're all kind of doing it alone and thinking alone. And it's so much fun. It's so energizing, I think, to get around other people who look at what you're doing and say, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And here's an idea. And you walk away going, what I do is cool. And I got a bunch of ideas. You just get re-inspired. You get reinvigorated. So events to me are just everything. Every event, I've never regretted any event I've ever gone to. Every event I've gone to, I've met amazing people. I met Bob Berg through events and Lori Richardson. And I told a story on LinkedIn the other day about meeting Jack Canfield at an event and getting to know him. And like that stuff does not happen through email or text or online. It just doesn't, right? And here we are on a podcast. I'm going to see you at Sell Well. And so we're going to have this we're going to get to a whole other level of connection, which will be completely different than just us talking on LinkedIn. And so events are I just can't say enough about them. They're incredible for your business and you need to be around other humans.
Yes, we really do. We were created to be in community. We were created to connect, to co-create, to collaborate together. And, I always say we're better together. So, Andrea, this has been such a powerful conversation. I know that people can find you at Sell Well, but if they're not able to attend or they want to find you elsewhere, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, probably I would encourage people to go to goforno.com.
Mhm.
And we've got to your point about no quotient, we've got a no quotient quiz they can take, which is kind of cool. They can see what their no quotient is. And I explain, if your no quotient is low, how to get better. So that's probably my best suggestion.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Andrea has given us so many permission slips to reimagine what no really means. And I know you will walk away with a renewed sense of courage. I'm also incredibly excited we'll both be on a stage. She'll be on the keynote one. I'll be on a different one at the upcoming Sell Well B2B Sales Conference, a one-of-a-kind event for purpose-driven sales professionals who want to grow with integrity. If you've been craving honest conversations, fresh strategies, and a sales community that actually feels good to be part of, this is it. And here's the bonus. This episode will be airing before the July 31st deadline, that if you register by then, you'll be invited to an exclusive pre-conference virtual meetup on Zoom where you can connect with other attendees and start building that momentum. So when you walk into the room, you'll be walking into a room full of friends. So, listener, I appreciate you being here, whether it's for the first time or you've become a loyal listener. It is being authentic and connecting as humans that will really make the difference and make you memorable as we grow our businesses together. I want to mention also that if you do decide to go to Sell Well and reach out to me for a special promotional discount, I'll save you $100 on the already affordable no-brainer fee. All right. So reach out to me if you want to attend that introductory session for being able to get to Sell Well, and do that by July 31st. So until next week, go chase your passion. It will reveal your purpose and take you on the path to discovering your legendary self. We'll see you here next week.